I think I should start again. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning. I'm Amna Nisar Abbasi, Research Officer at the Institute of Regional Studies, Islamabad. On behalf of our team, I warmly welcome our distinguished panelists, moderator, and all the participants into today's discussion on Pakistan-Iran's relation, prospects of socio-economic cooperation. Now, I would like to request Ambassador Nadeem Riaz, President IRS, for the welcoming remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Amna. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. It's such a pleasure to have this panel with us today on a topic which is of great interest. I would like to welcome the Ambassador. Excellency, thank you very much for sparing time to be with us and all the other distinguished panelists. And without much ado, I would pass the mic back to Amna so that we can move forward and listen to the honorable panelists on this important subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We have Mr. CHEEMA with us today, who will moderate this session. Before I hand over the floor to Mr. CHEEMA, let me introduce him. Mr. CHEEMA is a permanent faculty member at the Department of International Relations of National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad, since 2010. He was also attached as a visiting faculty member with Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad, National University of Science and Technology, Islamabad, ZEBIS, and International Islamic University, Islamabad. Mr. CHEEMA has done his MPhil research in FMCT and nuclear non-proliferation in South Asia, and PhD research on transnational character of political Islam, repercussion for Pakistan. Mr. CHEEMA frequently appears on national and international media as a strategic and political analyst. He has published a number of research articles in national and international journals. He is also a regular contributor of Daily Times and Arab News. With this, over to you, Dr. CHEEMA.
Thank you very much, Amna, and thank you very much, Ambassador Riaz. And thank you, Institute of Regional Studies, for this wonderful initiative and dialogue, where we have the Iranian ambassador as well. Since this topic is Pakistan and Iran relations, prospects of socio-economic cooperation, I think this dialogue and this session of today is just in line with the Foreign Minister and Prime Minister Imran Khan's approach that we should have we need to work on economic diplomacy. And Iran, being a very important neighbor of Pakistan and being a brotherly Islamic country, has been playing a very key role in the peace and development in the region. And recently, in this OIC session, the Iranian Foreign Minister was here. So we really believe that today's discussion will be very important. We have obviously three panelists. We have Honorable Ambassador of Iran, Syed Mohammad Ali Hosseini. We also have Lieutenant General retired ABDUL QAYYUM, and we also have Dr. RASHID Ahmad Khan. First of all, I would request His Excellency Ambassador Syed Mohammad Ali, who is Ambassador in Pakistan, and the most important of him is that he has been very close to the Foreign Minister of Iran. He has been to the assistant to the Minister for the Foreign Affairs before joining in Islamabad. And since he's an ambassador in Iran, I have been seeing, and many people in Pakistan have been observing, that there have been a lot of public diplomacy where he's engaging many people. Economic activity has started. He's reaching out to different stakeholders. So in today's session, we would like to hear that what Honorable Ambassador Syed Mohammad Ali has to say about Pakistan and Iran relations, particularly this talk on the socio-economic cooperation between Pakistan and Iran. Over to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Excellency, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Institute of Regional Studies, dear participants, Assalamu alaikum. At the outset, I would like to thank the esteemed directors of the Institute of Regional Studies for convening of this important webinar. This meeting will be a great opportunity for me to outline the various dimensions of Iran-Pakistan relations and the perspective ahead. Given the depth and nature of relations between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, various topics can be included in today's discussion, and I will try to present my discussion by underscoring on the capacities and programs in progress in three parts. Part one, Iran-Pakistan cooperation with emphasis on the component of neighborhood and in the shadow of relationships commonalities. The Islamic Republic of Iran and Islamic Republic of Pakistan having cultural, ethnic, religious commonalities and having the best peaceful relations since many years, as well as having great economic capacities and potentials, can complement and meet each other's needs in various economic, commercial, and trade fields. Enjoying long common border, geopolitical features, which I believe Pakistan is the gateway to Asia and Iran the gateway to Europe, have inevitably led Iran and Pakistan to work together. The base of the foreign policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran is on the golden principle of neighbors first. In this regard, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is one of the main priorities for the development of political, economic, and social relations. Characteristics and distinctions of both the countries in the economic field can be a factor to joint markets of the two countries, which in case of correct perceptions of the current circumstances could be a factor of further promotion of bilateral ties. If Iran is a drought-stricken country and needs rice and agricultural products, Pakistan is a rich source of these products. So the important question is, how long do we have to wait for this great potential to be captivated, and when our people to see the result of our cooperation? The Islamic Republic of Iran, as an important country in the world energy market, is ready to share its surplus capacity and capability in this field with the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. As one of the most important countries in the field of oil production and extraction, Iran has the second largest gas reserves in the world with 80,000 megawatt of electricity generation capacity, is ready to meet the energy needs at any level. Although we understand the international and regional considerations, we consider the enjoyment of the blessings of energy to be the right of all the people of the world, especially the good people of Pakistan. Part two, boosting of economic and trade relations, the most important task ahead. In view of the goal set by the high-ranking officials of the two countries regarding to increase the volume of trade up to $5 billion, more efforts should be made to achieve this strategy by both sides. Identifying potential capacities and removing existing obstacles and problems can help us to achieve this goal. At present, the volume of trade relations between Iran and Pakistan, considering the capacities of the two countries, is not up to the mark, and lack of banking channels relations between the two countries is one of the most important factors in this regard. Therefore, one of the important priorities in boosting of bilateral economic relations should be the establishment of banking relations between the two countries. This subject, along with the other confidence building measures, including the finalization of the free trade agreement, can help us achieve this important task. We hope that in the 21st session of the Joint Economic Commission of the countries at the end of this year, the most important issues ahead will be agreed upon and will help to increase the level of economic relations. I can announce with confidence that Iran, in order to enhance all-out relations with Pakistan, particularly trade and economic relations, is fully active, welcomes any initiative and idea to achieve this goal. Transit promotion, harbinger of bright future of bilateral relations. As you are aware, the promotion of cooperation in transportation and transit area considered vital to boost the economic and trade ties. Therefore, this subject also plays an important role in the bilateral relations between Iran and Pakistan, considering the principle of neighborliness and long common border. Fortunately, Iran and Pakistan are cooperating in 4 areas: land, rail, sea, and air. Given the importance of this sector, it is necessary for the two countries to make maximum utilization of this infrastructure by resolving the existing problems. Iran and Pakistan, due to their privileged geographical location, have a prominent role in connecting Asia and Europe, and development of transit infrastructure in both the countries from this perspective is important. The Istanbul-Tehran-Islamabad freight train, also known as the ECO train, has been launched in 2021 according to the agreement signed by the ministers of transport of the ECO member countries. Pakistan International Airlines has also resumed its flights to Iran, and this is good news for the two great nations of Iran and Pakistan. Negative impact of sanctions on bilateral relations. Unfortunately, the unilateral and oppressive US sanctions against the Iranian nation have created very difficult conditions for the people, and in this ominous phenomenon coincided with the outbreak of the coronavirus has made the supply of medicine and food more difficult. But US sanctions are one-sided and completely off the international agenda. There is no law or legitimacy behind this unilateralism, and many countries have shown the courage to stop it. For example, the Republic of Iraq has recently received special exemptions for economic and trade cooperation with Iran, including for the import of electricity from Iran. The outbreak of coronavirus has affected all aspects of the world economy, and the economic relations between Iran and Pakistan have been no exception. Although at the beginning of the crisis, there were problems for trade relations between the two countries, but now with the necessary measures, the previous problems have been solved and even new opportunities have been explored. In the same context, during recent year, 2 official border crossings between the two countries have been officially opened with the aim of facilitating traveling and commercial activities, and the opening of the 3rd border crossing and the establishment of border markets this year are on the agenda, which reflects the mutual understanding of the two countries' officials to address the limitations caused by the coronavirus and to create new opportunities to strengthen trade and economic cooperation. Shah Bahar and Gwadar ports. The port of Shah Bahar in Iran and the port of Gwadar in Pakistan have great potential to strengthen the connection between our economies in the first place and all regional countries in the second. Pakistan and Iran in the light of convergence and the possible realization of the great dormant potential is essential for the development and prosperity of the region. The opening of the new Rimdan Gap border crossing, which is located a short distance from these two ports, can be effective in developing the infrastructure of these ports and is considered the best example for the complementarity of these ports. Cooperation between the two countries in the field of CPEC. The Islamic Republic of Iran supports any project that strengthens harmony between countries and strengthens the bonds of peace and friendship among nations and contributes to the economic development and prosperity of the region. In this regard, we appreciate and welcome the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project called CPEC. That is why Iran has repeatedly declared its readiness to participate in this project at the highest level. Part 2, Iran-Pak cooperation with emphasis on social and public relations. A, tourism industry. The Islamic Republic of Iran is ready to expand its cooperation with Pakistan in all types of tourism, including pilgrimage, historical, recreational, and health tourism. For example, the existence of vast natural resources and mineral springs and the rich and ancient history of Iranian medical science in various fields and the diversity of medical services and its quality have attracted attention to this type of tourism in Iran. Types of surgery in organ transplantation and infertility treatment. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the most advanced country in the West Asian region. In addition, the two governments have taken steps to facilitate the movement of people between the two countries, including increasing the number of direct flights. Cooperation between PIA and the government of Pakistan is also required to establish direct flight between the capitals of the two countries. B, cooperation in the field of urban management, participation of cities in PAC Iran for sustainable development. Considering Iran's managerial and technological capabilities in the field of urban management, Iran is ready to offer its experiences and services in the field of urban planning, waste management, technical and engineering services, and culture developing in the field of health and municipality to Pakistan. Whereas the twinning agreement between the sister cities provides the necessary capacity for the participation of cities, and this leads to the sustainable development of the cities of the two countries. In the recent meetings with Pakistani officials from the Islamic Republics of Iran missions have discussed ways to revive sisterhood agreements between the two cities, including Lahore with the cities of Mashhad and Isfahan. The meetings discussed ways to further strengthen cultural, educational, and tourism ties by reviving sibling agreements between Lahore, Isfahan, and Mashhad, as well as Multan and Rashid cities. C, cooperation in scientific and academic fields. Since scientific exchange between different scientific and research centers have a fundamental role in the development and promotion of their educational and research quality, and in view of the important progress of the two countries in the field of science and technology, international scientific and academic society, universities, and research centers of the two countries are on the agenda. In this regard, the plan to establish and Iran-Pakistan University Cooperation and Study Center is under consideration. The cooperation in the fields of culture, art, and sports, considering cultural, religious, linguistic commonalities and common social values, signing a memorandum of understanding with the media, study, and press centers, producing joint cultural products such as of sports delegations are on the agenda of the two countries. Part 3, regional cooperation. The Islamic Republic of Iran and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, by participating in regional forums and organizations, including the Economic Cooperation Organization, ECO, the D8 organization, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are good examples of cooperation in regional frameworks and mechanisms. These regional organizations, especially the Economic Cooperation Organization and the D8 organization, have good capacities for cooperation in various economic fields, including trade, transportation, and tourism, which is necessary to utilize the most of this potential with the close consensus of Iran and Pakistan. Multilateral cooperation between countries in the region, including Iran, China, and Pakistan, is considered a unique opportunity to expand the concept of regionalism to develop economic cooperation. The Islamic Republic of Iran supports this idea and believes that if this framework of cooperation is realized, countless benefits will arise for the people of three countries. Monetary, financial, and banking cooperation, oil, petrochemical, gas cooperation, transit, and agricultural cooperation, and cultural, scientific, and tourism cooperation are also among the most important capacities of a trilateral cooperation between Iran, Pakistan, and China. In conclusion, the Islamic Republic of Iran and Islamic Republic of Pakistan, as two Muslim countries and neighbors with a population of more than 300 million people, must take practical steps to take full advantage of each other's economic potential. Interaction and collaboration with neighbors is the main strategy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, especially the roadmap of the 13th government, which was emphasized by the President Ayatollah Raisi in his recent meeting with high-ranking officials of the eastern neighbor, Pakistan. Relations between Iran and Pakistan as two important countries in West and South Asia in recent years are based on the components of neighborliness, common interests, and mutual respect, and along the set goals are moving towards clear horizons. Referring to the numerous capacities in bilateral relations, I reiterate that the collective efforts of all of us should be in the direction of activating these potentials and with the aim of helping to promote sustainable development and helping the welfare and progress of nations, and the Islamic Republic of Iran welcomes from any initiative in this regard. Ending, I would like to thank all of you for your patience in listening to me, and again to the respected directors of the Institute of Regional Studies who gave me this opportunity to discuss the importance of relations between the two important countries, Iran and Pakistan. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, His Excellency, Ambassador Sayyid Mohammad Ali Hosseini, for helping us to understand the potential, the depth of the bilateral relations between both the countries. And you have mentioned every field in which there could be cooperation. And we absolutely agree with you that we need to act now. And this is a moment to act. Recently, We have seen that Pakistan, Iran just decided through the 9th Joint Trade Committee meeting in Tehran in November that they shall boost their trade to $5 billion in the next 5 years. I would say that there is a term we call in economics, gravity model of the trade, that we should go for a trade with the countries or with the markets which are near to us. And Iran, being a neighborly country, I think does come in that loop. And the level of the relationship so far we have seen between Pakistan and Iran so far in the last 75 years. This makes the case that things should have been at a different pace. But I think since the government of Pakistan has decided that we should move away from these geostrategic competitions to geoeconomics, that makes the case that the orientation and the view of the Pakistani administration at the moment is just right in line where we want to take our country. Our second speaker with us is Lieutenant General. We have Lieutenant General ABDUL Lieutenant General ABDUL is a former senator and he's a Hilal-e-Imtiaz military. He's a retired ex-chairman of the Senate Standing Committee on Defense Production. The general is a war veteran of 1971 Indo-Pak War and a renowned political defense analyst. General also remained as a parliamentary chairman for Pakistan, Iran, and member of the Pakistan-America Parliamentary Friendship Group. Since General was traveling from Lahore to Islamabad, and we couldn't have him online because we thought that the weather condition is that it could disturb. So we have a recorded video of Lieutenant General ABDUL with us.
I am grateful to the institution, the Institute, for inviting me on this very important subject. I will touch upon four different aspects of this issue. One is the strength of Iran as a country. Number two, Pakistan-Iran relationship. Number three, what are the present now irritants in which these relationships have suffered because of them. And finally, some recommendations. So starting with the first part, Iran is a very important country on the globe. It has a population of over about 80 million people. It has a very rich culture and very old history of thousands of years. And it has a strong armed forces of about 500,000 people. It has missiles. Its defense budget is about $20 billion. And they have raised this army because for their defense. In addition to that, it has rich uranium deposits. Its GDP is about $454 billion. And it has Pakistan-US bilateral trade is not as good as we would like. It was $1.5 billion and it is now little less than that. On the Pakistan-Iran relations, we have very deep-rooted historic ties. With pride, I say that when Pakistan came into being in 1947, Iran was the first country which recognized it. And I think that gave strength to the idea of creation of a new state. And then in 1950, it was visited, the Pakistan and Iran signed a treaty of agreement. Then in 1964, we were part of RCD, in which Turkey was also included. In 1965 Indo-Pak War, Iran was in the forefront to help Pakistan. In 1971, again, our war with India, Iran had the sympathies for Pakistan. They provided us military equipment. and that was very good. The Iranian Revolution in 1979, our president, Pakistan was then the first country to recognize the new revolution. And our president, Ziaul Haq, had then said that this coming of Khomeini Sahib is in fact the resurgence of Islam in this. Then in 1985, we became members of the ECO, both 1989 and that Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. In that, there were differences between Pakistan and Iran, because Iran was supporting Northern Alliance and Pakistan was supporting Mujahideen. That created some ripples. But then that was overtaken. In 1999, we signed a free trade agreement with Iran. And in 2001, Pakistan-Iran Joint Business Council was established. And in 2002, probably, President of Iran paid a visit to Pakistan, and that was in a very good atmosphere. Now, what have been the problem areas? The problem area in which our bilateral relations, socio-economic, could not prosper. Number one is the United States unilateralism. That you want to pinpoint a country and targeted sanctions. So when you bypass the UN Charter and UN resolutions, and you don't allow a sovereign country to continue its own efforts for its economic prosperity or defense for that matter, based on the threat that they have, then you put sanctions and you single out that country. So this is what has been happening. And the irony is that in 1950, United States gave the first atomic reactor to Iran. But subsequently, then they started targeting them. And Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, when it was signed, later on, you see, unilaterally again, it was abrogated. Iran support for Palestinian cause, which all Muslims support, but then I see that that was also taken not in a positive spirit. And because America is aligned with Israel and India, therefore they created that problem. Then Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline, which is a very good project. It was the need of Pakistan, which is an energy stop. That again came under those sanctions. That could have provided us cheap energy, which we needed. But then it was said that if you sign that, you will be under sanctions and so on. There were restrictions on banking transactions. There was a restriction on trade. So that is how I just... So that is what was really in a bad taste. Then Iran and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia relationship and their differences on Yemen, etc. Again, in a Muslim world, that I think that was also one of the irritants, which could not create that harmony in the Muslim world to move forward. Then US always violated United Nations Charter and never bothered for the international law. And they targeted killing in Iran, which was so unfortunate and singled out. The cooperation area with Iran that we can do, I had the honor to be the chair of Pakistan-Iran Parliamentary Friendship Group, which was made in when I was a senator. So I have been visiting Iran, and Iranian brothers have been visiting Pakistan, and we tried to remove all the irritants as far as we could do. but then there were sanctions, and unfortunately, we did not succeed on reviving Pakistan-Iran gas pipeline issue and other things. But I feel that we can do barter trade and so on. In the border management, we have land border with Iran, which is a country contiguous to our country, and we have same religion. And secondly, we have a contiguous coastline, which is a blessing. And I feel that we should, we can cooperate on that, that there is no terrorism activity across the border, drug trafficking, and then all sorts of human trafficking that we can stop. In addition to that, since we are improving now Gwadar port, and then we have next door Chabahar, I think these ports need to be interlinked through the ferry service and also through the railway line. And that is how we can mutually move forward. In addition to that is cooperation in China-Pakistan economic corridor. And that should be extended to Chabahar and Iran so that all the regional countries benefit. Already there are more than 60 countries linked with this in different continents of the world. So CPEC is one project on which we can move hand in glove and really work for our country. Then we need to also do media cooperation. I think in Pakistan, we need to have some Iranian television network which should be working, highlighting the Iranian way of living, Iranian culture, Iranian, how they have improved their governance, how they are managing their issues, tourism and all that. Similarly, Pakistani channels in Urdu and in Persian, both in Iran, can also explain the strength of this country, which is over 200 million people, the tourism, the sites that we have, the best of them and all that. In the defense cooperation, again, we can undertake giant projects and move forward on that account. And then we always are grateful to the Iranian brothers for supporting the Kashmiri cause. And despite these international irritants, which by the vested interests, I think we must sit together and try to understand each other's compulsions and never ever give a chance to any foreign power, may it be United States or Israel or India, to create or to exploit any fault line. So on that account, I am sure that we have a mutual understanding. I feel that today in the entire globe, there are 4 flashpoints, which are nuclear flashpoints. One is Eurasia, where in Ukraine and issue of Crimea and all that. Second is South China Sea. Third is important is the Middle East, where the Israelis, who have 1.7 lakh people, regular army, and about 3.3 million reserves. It has a population of less than about 10 million people, but they have nukes, about 90 of them. They have missiles, and they have chemical, biological weapons, and so on. And they create a threat in Middle East. And the countries which want to protect their sovereignty and territorial integrity as per the UN Charter, they have the right. They want to really create, neutralize that threat. And that one first method of doing that is through diplomatic means to diffuse the threat. But if that doesn't happen and your country is penetrated and attacked and your leaders are killed, then you have to take precautions also, that you create a deterrence that the others don't really. And the fourth flashpoint is South Asia, in which Kashmir is dispute between 2 nuclear powers. And we pray and hope that both these countries, Pakistan and Iran, work for the prosperity of our people and promote peace in this region. And especially in Afghanistan, we must sit together and see how we can help Afghan brothers without creating any sort of misunderstanding. And it is very good now that Iran is interacting with the Afghan Taliban government, and so is Pakistan doing on this account. We should have frequent visits of Iran, Pakistan leadership, and especially at the level of the parliaments. Parliamentary diplomacy is very important because I've been interacting with the parliamentarians in Iran, and that has been always fruitful, that removes misunderstandings and so on. So with that, I conclude my input.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant General retired ABDUL for your remarks. And his video remarks just mentioned that we need to work more and we have to strengthen our ties. We have worked a lot, obviously, between both the countries are closer partners. And recently, the Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Iran and the Army Chief General Bajwa's visit to Iran, the things have improved a lot. Relationship is working good, and we are right now going in the right direction. And the only thing which we really need to work is how to improve the trade, and that is where both the countries are working. And as I mentioned earlier, this new approach of geoeconomics is going to bring the results. Now we have the last speaker, Dr. Rashid Ahmed Khan, with us. Dr. Rashid Ahmed Khan is a former professor and chairman, Department of Political Science, University of the Punjab, Lahore. He served there from 1971 to 2001. He has still recently worked as a founder and chairman and professor of the Department of International Relations, University of the Central Punjab, Lahore, till 2020. Prior to that, he was associated with the University of Sargodha as a professor and chairman at Department of Political Science and International Relations, and is a dean, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. I have a long introduction of Dr. Rashid Ahmed Khan, but I would just like Professor Dr. Rashid Ahmed Khan to come forward and express your view about the topic, so that our viewers could understand an academic perspective. We have had a diplomat's perspective, a retired general's perspective, and this is an academic perspective. Thank you very much, Dr. Rashid, please.
I have a long association with the Regional Studies Institute, and it's a matter of great prayer to participate in this webinar. Thank you very much. Well, I will start with saying that Iran is not an ordinary neighbor of Pakistan. We have a third largest border with this country. But it's unfortunate to say that the Pakistan-Iran relations in economic areas, in cultural areas, even in political areas, have suffered a great damage, serious damage during the last 40 years. Now is the time to compensate and correct that damage by focusing on Iran. And I will not go into the reasons of that damage. Everybody knows about that. But only I would say that Iran from 1947 up to the present has remained true, very sincere towards Pakistan. Perhaps not many people know that when East Pakistan seceded from West Pakistan, and Pakistan suffered a great damage, a setback to its economy because we lost a protected market. And secondly, when it was a time when the United States stopped not only military assistance to Pakistan, but also seriously dropped the economic aid to Pakistan. It was Iran at that time which came forward and replaced the United States as the principal source of economic assistance to Pakistan. In just 5 years after 1971, Iran-Pakistan trade increased 5 times, and it was a great help to Pakistan. And we all know that prior to that, Iran had tried to reconcile differences between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And according to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, had there been no military coup in Pakistan in 1977, perhaps the issue of Durand line between Pakistan and Afghanistan would have been resolved. But I will not go further into the details of events which took place in the past. I think very eminent honorable speakers have thrown light on various aspects of Pak-Iran relations, and although given details about the trade, economic relations, and also developed upon the future prospects of relations between the two countries, I would say only try to identify the areas where there's a great potential for increase between Pakistan and Iran. And of course, those areas are trade, investment, then cultural relations. I still remember that till 1970s, Pakistan-Iran cultural relations used to be very robust. In Pakistan, at various places in Lahore, in Rawalpindi, in Peshawar, in Quetta, in Multan, even in Karachi, there were Iranian cultural centers, Khana Farange, Iran, and even Persian classes used to be held for Pakistanis. And a large number of Pakistanis used to have benefit from those Persian classes. But those things have gone. And I think there is a need to restart this process of cultural relations between Pakistan and Iran by increased pace of exchange of cultural visits between the two countries. If we try to examine, try to see the number of exchanges between Iran and Pakistan, they are in indiscriminate number. I think there is a great need to enhance the level of cultural exchanges between, and also frequency of cultural exchanges between Iran and Pakistan. That would create great understanding. Although there is always love between Iran and Pakistan. Pakistani people love Iranian people, and Iranian people consider Pakistanis their brothers. The two great Urdu poets of subcontinent, Allama Iqbal and Ghalib, they are better known in Iran than in Pakistan. Secondly, I think as far as trade is concerned, there are two types of trade between Iran and Pakistan: formal trade and informal trade. So far, formal trade is concerned, it has gone down, as the ambassador has rightly pointed out, that prior to COVID-19, the volume of bilateral trade between Iran and Pakistan was $1.5 billion. But after COVID-19, it has gone down to only $1 billion. That is the state of trade, bilateral trade between Iran and Pakistan. Somebody mentioned about the pledge made by Iran and Pakistan to increase this volume of trade to $5 billion. I know that this pledge was made not once. It has been made again and again. But unfortunately, we have failed to fulfill that pledge. So we should go in, we should study, we should look into the reasons why there is a lot of enthusiasm on both sides of the border for increasing bilateral trade. And there is also big potential in both countries to increase trade, bilateral trade, and investment. Then why does not that happen? I mean to say, one reason is that during the last 40 years, we have remained focused only on Afghanistan. Afghanistan has taken more than a due share of Pakistan's attention and resources. I think this process should be reversed. Now we should pay attention to our neighbors, not only Iran, but other neighbors also. And base our relations on realism and true historical, cultural, and also economical imperatives. We have ignored all these to the detriment of our national interest in the last 40 years. So this is a huge damage that has been done to the economy of Pakistan, to the society of Pakistan, that needs to be corrected. Now, there is an informal sector. I had a chance to travel in Balochistan from Turbat up to the port of Juni on the Arabian Sea, on the both banks of the River, in connection with the research project. That is I was assigned by ABDUL or other organization to conduct environment impact assessment of the construction of Minani Dam in 2001. I traveled, I mean, along with my team, and I have witnessed the state of economic situation in Pakistani part of Balochistan, on those areas. Virtually on almost every item of daily use, that area of Pakistan depends on Iran. It still depends on Iran, from toothpaste, from biscuits, from wheat flour, from oil, everything was coming from Afghanistan, from Iran. But that trade is informal. I mean, that which we can also call smuggling. This trade should be regulated. And then our province of Balochistan is much closer to Iran. When at a later stage, again, that was also in connection with the research project, I went to Turbat in the month of June. Believe me, when I arrived there, I was told by the local people, they told me that you have arrived in a weather, in a season where it's very hot, and only for 2.5 hours there was electricity. The whole of area was without electricity for the rest of the day. Even so, this state of affairs, I mean to say, the development of Balochistan, which is very dear to, which has been very dear, at least in words, to every government of Pakistan, that can be accomplished with cooperation with Iran. So if you want to develop Balochistan, please enter into some kind of arrangement with Iran, because we had also been importing electricity from Iran. Iran can be invited to invest in Balochistan, and then I would say that no country has contributed to the evolution, to development and evolution of civilization and culture in South Asia than Iran. So we should trust the Iranian people. We should listen to the advice of the people. Iranians had even tried to reconcile Pakistan differences with the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan during the 90s, but Pakistan paid no attention. So I mean to say that now it is the time for the government of Pakistan. We have now a government which claims to be forward-looking, which claims to be very interested in the development of Balochistan. So I think Iran provides cooperation with Iran, joint ventures with Iran provide an opportunity to undertake development projects in Balochistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rashid Ahmed, for your perspective over this Pakistan-Iran relations. And obviously, you have mentioned the urgency which is required to look into and to expedite the areas where we really need to work. Thank you very much for input. Now, this is a time for some comments and time for some questions. First, I would request Ambassador Rifat Masood that please share your comments for today's session. Ambassador Rifat Masood. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Now, and thank you very much to the IRS for this important session, as well as Mr. CHEEMA for moderating it. I have been ambassador to Iran, and that was my last assignment. And I appreciate the comments made by Ambassador Hosseini and, of course, General Saab and Professor Saab as well. But I would just like to make a couple of comments, if I may. It is all very well for us, and it is very important for us to recall our strong historical, cultural ties. It is important for us to remember the political relationship, the strong ties that we have always had with Iran, whether they were strategic or security, our cooperation in both security and strategic sectors. All of this is very, very important, and we must never forget the deep-rooted ties that exist between the people of Iran and the people of Pakistan. The people-to-people contact is, of course, very, very important. And I must congratulate both the Iranian and Pakistani governments for resuming the air connectivity, because that is not only bringing the two people together, but also will help in improving our economic and social relations as well. Because as you know, air connectivity had stopped for a while because of the coronavirus, and now the flights have resumed. Iran Air has resumed its flights, which is a good thing. And also, it is very good that we have a cooperation through ECO, which Ambassador Hosseini also referred to. But all this is very good, and I'm very glad that we have brought it to the table. But we must also have a very, very, and in organizations, in forums like this, I think we have the independence and the courage to speak about it. We must have a very clear reality check on what our relations really are and what are the bottlenecks and the problems that we face. Because geoeconomics, of course, has been part of Pakistan's foreign policy objectives and strategy for quite a while now. Yes, this government has placed a lot of emphasis on it, but previous governments had also done it. And we in the Foreign Office had been trying to pursue economic ties with all our regional partners and even global partners. But don't forget that economic relations, geoeconomic is very, very dependent, very strongly dependent on security and political and strategic relations within countries as well. That's what actually governs how strong your economic ties are. And the reality check that I would like to point out, and I'm sure that the speakers would agree with me, is in fact the existence of these unilateral US sanctions on Iran, which have hindered our economic partnership. As Professor Saab has pointed out, economic ties between border countries are a natural thing. When you go to you don't have to go to Balochistan, you don't have to go to Sistan, Balochistan in Iran to see the border trade taking place, the informal border trade. You can even experience it in Islamabad, in Karachi, or even in Tehran. And because it's natural for border countries to trade, if the relations are governed by political and security realities, such as the sanctions on Iran, and our relations, our dependence, I would like to call it, on the United States and Saudi Arabia, then that reality, of course, hinders economic trade across the borders, which leads to the informal trade or smuggling, as I would call it. And I must say that this is something which both countries, both Iran and Pakistan, have to actually tackle head on. The informal trade or the smuggling that's taking place across the border is not only a security risk, but it is in fact hampering and seriously affecting our economic ties. Where we can legalize trade, unfortunately, we have not been able to do so. We need to focus on this. We need to see how we must not allow our relations with other countries govern our bilateral economic ties. And this goes for Iran as well. Don't forget, Iran has a very strong economic partnership with India. And it is, and Chabahar is one of the realities of that. And we must not forget the security impact that the border between Iran and Pakistan has had, and how India has played a role in it. So these are all things we must keep in the back of our mind when we are talking about how to move forward in our relations. We must understand that, okay, Pakistan has a deep-rooted and strong tie with Saudi Arabia and with the United States, but why should that hinder us from improving our relations with Iran economically and politically? Barter has been mentioned a few times. It is a known way of trading. I don't see what the problem is in that. China and Russia and even India have formed financial mechanisms in which they are able to trade with Iran, and despite the sanctions and despite the other hurdles. So we should also, Pakistan should also be seriously considering this. And I remember when I was ambassador there, this was one of the biggest problems I had, even with our own government, of trying to find mechanisms, financial mechanisms especially, because no businessman is going to invest or trade if their investments and their money is not secure. Nobody will do it. So in order to protect the business interests of both Pakistanis and Iranians, we have to try to devise an out-of-the-box financial mechanism. And those do exist. I mean, people have talked about it. They are on the table. We just need to consider them seriously. Iran's relations with India, Iran also has to realize that, you know, we are uncomfortable with that relationship. And Iran, although has always supported us on Kashmir and will continue to do so, but its economic ties with India are very, very important for Iran itself. So we have to work with Iran despite the strong ties with, I mean, Pakistani rice, I know for a fact that rice from Pakistan is not going to Iran directly, but it is Indian rice, which basically is Pakistani basmati, is being packaged and sent to Iran. Now, these are issues which are practical issues, which we must address as governments and even as business communities. We have to find ways around it. Why is it that rice is going from India to Iran and not from Pakistan? Although we have signed so many agreements, we have got so many MOUs, joint commission meetings, we have so many, we have PTA, which is not implemented. We have FTA, which is in the works. We have all these things happening, but in practicality, the relations, economic ties, although 5 billion, we talk about 5 billion, we're not even near that target. And we were never near that target. So I think what I wanted to basically say is that I'm very happy that the historical and the importance of relations with Iran and between Iran and Pakistan have been pointed out, but we must also try to find ways in addressing these real bottlenecks in which the people of the two countries are suffering. You see, I mean, if we have a robust and vibrant border trade between Pakistan and Iran, believe me, the people of Balochistan from Pakistan and the people of Sistan Balochistan in Iran will be benefiting the most. And don't forget that these are things which are doable. If petrol, if fuel is being smuggled from Iran into Pakistan, why can't we find a way, devise a mechanism to legalize it so that it doesn't get smuggled? So that people of Balochistan in Pakistan and the people of Sistan Balochistan can actually prosper from the fact that fuel is being sold illegally across the border. Now, these are practical issues which need serious consideration, I believe, from both governments. I mean, I think both governments are trying, they go around the issue, we talk around the issue, but we don't act, we know that this problem exists, but we don't try to tackle it. I mean, this is my take as a retired diplomat. Of course, I can speak more openly. I know that there are a lot of pressures, there are a lot of challenges which one faces, but a think tank like IRS and academics like you we depend on you actually. The governments depend on inputs from you in finding ways to tackle issues which really which would improve our relations. And I think lastly, I just like to comment on ECO. I think ECO is a way forward. It is something that we have been ignoring for a while. I have attended so many ECO meetings. There's a lot of rhetoric, as in most meetings takes place, but there are issues which can be done. And the Ambassador HOSSEINI pointed out this freight train. This is a practical example of how ECO can work. And I think if we are facing issues bilaterally because of US sanctions and other strategic challenges, then ECO is one way forward in which not only Iran and Pakistan, but the entire region, including Afghanistan, can benefit greatly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rifat Masood, for your valuable comments. And obviously, this was a first-hand information since you served there. And thank you very much for your valuable inputs. Now, I would request the Senior Research Analyst in the IRS, Mr. Imran Sardar, to share his comments, please.
Thank you very much for the comments. I do not have much to say in the presence of the learned panelist. In my view, opportunities of cooperation between the two countries have always there. But in the shadow of US withdrawal from Afghanistan, cooperation in the areas of mutual interest, I think, is highly required this time, since the sustainability of cooperation is at the mercy of the peace in the region. For that matter, Pakistan and Iran needs to work together on both fronts, the security and the trade as well. So we must admit that a kind of a boost that required after the US withdrawal is unfortunately is not there. And I hope in the coming days, there would be more interaction between the two countries to address the regional security challenges as well as to enhance the trade between the two countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Imran Sardar, for your valuable comments. Now the floor is open for the questions. If there is any question to His Excellency Ambassador HOSSEINI, to Dr. Rashid Ahmed, or to anyone else, please go for that. Ambassador HOSSEINI, if you would like to comment on something, if you really want to say something out of all the discussion which has happened after you, I was looking, you were taking so many notes, obviously, for your personal consumption, official consumption. But if you want to say something, sir, please do. Please unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. And by your permission, I will explain some issues in Persian. I use my translator here also to explain more and accurate. یکی از نکاتی که اشاره فرمودن دوستان در رابطه با راه‌های تقویت همکاری‌های تجاری است به صورت عملی.
One of the points which has been mentioned here are the ways to promote the relationship between the countries.
یکی از راه‌هایی که واقعاً میشه مورد استفاده قرار داد الان موضوع بارتر ترید و تجارت تهاتری است.
One of these ways we can utilize at the moment is the barter trade between the two countries.
ببینید ما در این مسیر حرکت کردیم و در مقابل صادرات برق برنج رو قبول کردیم که دریافت کنیم به جای هارد کارنسی.
And we have moved forward in this direction, and in this regard we have accepted the dues and the amount against the exports of electricity and against it the export of rice to Iran.
خب این به خوبی داشت پیش میرفت، اما متاسفانه با برخی از مشکلات برخورد کردیم که با بانک مرکزی پاکستان الان داریم به دنبال حل این مشکل هستیم، مشکلی که بیشتر برای تجار پاکستانی ایجاد شده.
The barter of electricity and rice was going well smoothly, but unfortunately the State Bank of Pakistan intervened.
برای این پیدا نشده.
And we have arranged various meetings to resolve this issue. And the Pakistani traders are also facing that problem, but unfortunately so far the issue has not been resolved.
اما به هر حال وقتی که ما به خاطر تحریم ها فاقد همکاری های بانکی و
I think this is mute.
His Excellency, kindly unmute yourself.
Yes.
راه عملی دیگری که دو کشور تصمیم گرفتن، توافق کردن برای تقویت همکاری‌های تجاری بردارن، ایجاد بازارچه‌های مشترک مرزی جدید هست.
And other practical step which has been taken and also taken by the especially border markets.
سه بازارچه مشترک توافق کردیم که مشغول کارهای مقدماتی هستیم. این یکی از بهترین کارها برای افزایش حجم مبادلات تجاری فیمابین هست.
And we have started work on 3 border markets and the foundation work is going on at the moment in these markets.
نکته دیگه، گام عملی دیگری که دو کشور برداشتن ایجاد گذرگاه‌های جدید مرزی هست.
And other practical step which has been taken by both the sides is the establishment of a new border crossing between the two countries.
خب شما مستحضر هستید که ما در طول 73 سال گذشته تنها یک گذرگاه رسمی در منطقه میرجاوب تفتان داشتیم، اما در سال گذشته موفق شدیم 2 گذرگاهمند رو هم افتتاح بکنیم.
As your good selves know that since 73 years there was only one border crossing point between the two countries at Mir Java and Taftan, but in the past year we have opened 2 new border crossing points at Ramadan Gabt and Peshin month.
خب اینم یکی از بهترین راه‌هاست برای تقویت همکاری‌های تجاری بین دو کشور.
And it is one of the best ways to boost the.
نکته دیگر این هستش که ما مسئولین دو کشور توافق دارن روی این که بهترین کاری که در شرایط فعلی میشه کرد حمایت بیش از پیش از بخش خصوصی است.
The officials of the two countries has been agreed on the point the best way at the moment to promote the trade relationship between the two countries is to encourage the private sector.
بخش خصوصی است که میتواند بسیاری از مشکلاتی که دولت‌ها بتوانند با انگیزه جدی‌تر و با پیگیری بیشتر حل و فصل کنند.
The private sector can solve a lot of problems which cannot be resolved by the government sector with their motivation and follow-ups.
پیوستن پاکستان به کنوانسیون تیر و همچنین راه اندازی قطار ترابری اسلام آباد، تهران، استانبول هم ظرفیت‌های جدیدی است که ما به خوبی می‌توانیم از
accession of Pakistan to TIR convention and also launching of ECO freight train between Islamabad, Tehran and Istanbul are the new avenues to promote the trade relationship between the two countries.
یکی از راه‌های دیگه‌ای که برخی از همسایگان دیگر ما استفاده کردن فشار به آمریکاست برای اخذ معافیت در مورد برخی عرض کنم همکار.
Another way which has been taken by some other nations pressurize the United States of America to exemptions for certain arms and
عراق این کار رو کرده، هند این کار رو کرده و برخی از کشورهای دیگه هم این کار رو کردن. نیاز جدی خودشون رو به آمریکایی‌ها مطرح کردن، اونها رو تحت فشار گذاشتن و معافیت گرفتن برای این نوع همکاری با ایران.
Iraq has taken some other countries. They put up their dire needs and requirements to the United States and pressurized that country to issue the exemptions for trade with Iran.
مقامات ما با مقامات پاکستانی صحبت کردن در این خصوص و شما میدانید نیازی مردم پاکستان رو به مشکلاتی که مخصوصا در فصل سرما با اون منابع محروم و مرزی، خب ایران به عنوان یک همسایه به راحتی در خصوص همون خط انتقال گاز IP و آمادگی که برای صادرات برق بیشتر داره، اینها فرصت هایی است که به هر حال آمریکایی‌ها باید تن بدن و معافیت لازم رو صادر بکنن برای برادران خواهران ما.
The Pakistani officials as requirements of the Pakistani people, especially in the winter season. They have to face a lot of problems due to the lack of sufficient gas, especially in the bordering areas, the people who are suffering with the poverty. And it's the need and also there is a readiness from the Iranian side to have the more electricity exports to Pakistan, and also the Pakistani brothers can discuss their issuance of exemptions in this regard.
در سفری که جناب آقای عبدالرزاق داوود به ایران داشتن، یکی از محورهای مهمی که پیگیری می‌کردن ایشون تهاتر برنج در مقابل LPG بود که طرف ایرانی به طور کامل با این طرح موافق هست و آمادگی داره که هرچه سریعتر اون رو اجرایی کنن.
During the visit of His Excellency Mr. Abdul Dawood, the Honorable Advisor to PM on Commerce Affairs, one of and the focus was on the barter of LPG and rice, and the Iranian side has expressed its readiness in this regard.
و در خصوص صادرات محصولات کشاورزی از طرف پاکستان به ایران و همچنین از طرف ایران به پاکستان هم توافقات خوبی صورت گرفته که میتواند به مرحله اجرا هم در بیاد.
Also there were agreements regarding the export of agriculture products from Pakistan to Iran, agriculture products to Pakistan. There were very good agreements and we hope that these agreements will be executed.
لذا همونطور که مشاهده می‌فرمایید ما راه‌های تقویت همکاری رو بین دو کشور همسایه داریم علی‌رغم فشار تحریم‌های یک‌جانبه آمریکا بر جمهوری اسلامی ایران که طبیعتاً بر دوستان جمهوری اسلامی ایران هم فشارهایی رو تحمیل کرده.
As you have this to promote our trade relationship, despite unilateral American sanctions and the pressures by the United States, and these pressures also exist on our friends.
من این نکات ذهنم رسید که خدمتتون تقدیم بکنم. امیدوارم که اینترنت اجازه داده باشه که من صحبتام کاملا به استحضار جناب والی رسیده باشه.
I have these points in my mind. I have expressed them. I hope the internet has allowed that you can conveniently.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Hosseini, for your comments. Obviously, those comments have been noted down and the observations have been obviously seen. Now, we just left with just 10 minutes of time and for this entire session. And we have a couple of questions. I would just request Mr. Hasnain Raza Mirza to please come up with your question. Mr. Hasnain Raza Mirza.
Thank you very much, Cheema sir, and Assalamu alaikum, Excellency Ambassador, and to all of the participants. I have just two set of questions, quick one. Most of them have been, other questions have been already discussed. So I have one part of my question is on the strategic side. Excellency, as you know that we have two very strong groupings. One is Abraham Accord and one is the Indo-Pacific thing. And we all know that Abraham Accord is a security threat to both Pakistan and Iran. It is pointed towards encircling Iran and similarly for Pakistan. So do you think that we, Pakistan and Iran, should sit together to evolve a joint strategy to safeguard their economic and national interests, which are being threatened by these two accords? This is my first question on the strategic side. On the economic side, Excellency, we have, as you remember, that we have launched an initiative as the part of our think tank Golden Ring Economic Forum, that is the shared economic recovery. And we have been discussing the barter arrangement and everything. So we also have presented to the Iranian side that let's form an SPV, special purpose vehicle, in the private sector, not in the government sector, because whenever you go into the government sector, there are so many issues and problems and restrictions. So if some Iranian business houses and Pakistani business houses, the governments can facilitate to form, your government, our government, to form a special purpose vehicle to do trade in either local currencies or in barter, as you said. We have already signed the barter agreement. We can do under this SPV. Secondly, we have some issues regarding the customs at the border. Although we have opened new points, but there still are customs issues. So we have already proposed, and we'd like to hear from you that is it not a good idea to for Pakistan and Iran to form a joint customs union? So these are my two questions to you, sir, and if you can elaborate on them. Thank you very much.
Do we have Honorable Ambassador here? His Excellency? Did you hear the question, sir? You didn't hear the question?
No, unfortunately, no.
Oh,
no voice.
There was no voice at your end?
No.
I can quickly repeat them, sir. Excellency, if I'm permitted to.
Please keep it short so that we are just left with minutes.
Sir, my first question was regarding the strategic side. That was regarding the Abraham Accord and Indo-Pacific Accords. That these are the two security threats to both Pakistan and Iran. So do you think that both countries need to sit together and devise a joint strategic policy to counter the threats, economic and strategic threats coming out of these two accords, number one. Number two, by economic side, I was saying that we have, as you know, we have been proposing under the Golden Ring Economic Forum to form a special purpose vehicle, not in public sector, but in private sector, to conduct this trade, barter trade or local currency trade. Some business houses from Iran and some business houses from Pakistan can form a special purpose vehicle to counter these sanctions and all other things. So this was my second question. Third one was that we are facing problems at the border points. So we need to discuss the custom union, joint custom union or some custom issues to resolve these custom points and duty points. Thank you, sir.
خیلی ممنونم از سوالاتی که مطرح فرمودید در مورد قرارداد آبراهام و سایر تهدیداتی که وجود داره. ما
we should have understanding and agreement regarding all the threats, including Abraham Accord.
یک اتفاق خوبی که الان داره میفته بین دو کشور این هستش که رفت و آمدهای مقامات امنیتی و نظامی ما افزایش پیدا کرده به خاطر منافع مشترک و تهدیدات مشترک.
One of the positive developments which has been happening at the moment is the frequent visits by the security and military officials of the two countries for their common interests.
و موردی که اشاره فرمودید یکی از تهدیدات مشترک ماست به خاطر
And the subject which has been referred by your good self is one of the threats which we are facing from the usurper Zionist regime of Israel.
و در مورد اینکه ما این تهدیدات منطقه‌ای رو که علیه ایران و علیه پاکستان هست چگونه مدیریت بکنیم قطعا نیازمند به رایزنی‌ها و دیدارهای بیشتر مقامات سیاسی و امنیتیمون هستیم.
Definitely regarding the threats which are facing, we are facing, there should be the consultations and also the bilateral visits.
در مورد بخش خصوصی و اینکه راهکارهای مناسبی رو پیدا کنن برای تقویت همکاری تجاری، بنده هم معتقدم با وجود اینکه ما اتاقهای بازرگانی نسبتاً فعالی داریم اما میتونن دو طرف بشینن، بخش خصوصی دو طرف بنشینه و تشکیلاتی رو بتونه ساماندهی بکنه که غلبه رو پیدا بکنه بر مشکلات فعلی همکاری‌های تجاری دو کشور.
Regarding your proposal for to activate the private sector and also the establishment of the business offices, I believe that despite the active role of the chambers of commerce in the two countries, the private sectors and the organizations active in this regard could be given a role that they can solve these issues.
جناب عالی استحضار دارید که ما الان یک اتاق مشترک داریم که نقش فعال اون رو اتاق مشترک ایران و پاکستان، اتاق بازرگانی سیستان و بلوچستان، اتاق بازرگانی زاهدان و اتاق بازرگانی کویت فقط ایفا میکنن، در حالی که ما باید بریم به این سمت که اتاق بازرگانی ها در ایالت های مختلف در پاکستان و استان های مختلف در ایران رو فعال بکنیم تا بتوانیم همکاری هامون رو ارتقا بدیم.
We have joint chamber of commerce and trade between the two countries, but at the moment only the chamber of commerce of Sistan, Balochistan and Quetta chamber of commerce are active in this regard. There is a need that we should activate the other chambers of commerce in the other provinces of the two countries to promote the trade relationship between the two countries.
در مورد گمرکات که اشاره فرمودید این یک مشکل مستمر بین دو کشور هست برای همکاری‌های دو کشور.
You have referred regarding the customs issues. It's a continuous issue between the two countries, and there is a need to address it.
از ساعت کاری که گمرکات در مرزها دارن این مشکل هست تا مواردی که به هر حال نسبت به تبادل کالا و عرض کنم مسائل دیگه وجود داره. اما ما توافق خوبی کردیم که اطلاعات لازم رو بین گمرکات دو کشور تبادل اطلاعاتش رو افزایش بدیم و توافق کردیم که ساعات کاری گمرکات دو کشور رو در مرزها افزایش بدیم و من تصور میکنم چون عزم و اراده دو طرف هست برای فعالسازی گذرگاه‌های مرزی و بازارچه‌های مرزی، گمرک قطعاً باید در این زمینه به ما کمک بکنه تا بتوانیم بهره برداری بیشتری از این ایده ها و ابتکارات بکنیم.
We have issues regarding the customs from working hours to the exchange of goods. Although we have made some agreements regarding the exchange of information on the customs, and there is a need that we should enhance our cooperation. And we have also agreed to increase the working hours of the customs and by in between the two countries, and also the establishment of the border markets. We need that we should activate our customs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Ambassador Hosseini, for your valuable remarks and for this answer. Since we are running out of the time, today is a Jummah and Jummah prayer is about to happen. So we will conclude this session here. We have some few questions here, but we won't be able to take. But thank you very much, each one of you, obviously, for participating. And what I have realized and what we have concluded out of this session, today's session for the socio-economic prospect between Pakistan and Iran, there is a dire need to work more. Both the Pakistan and Iran really want to work, and all this red tape and all these hurdles must be overcome so that actually we can get benefit out of being neighbors. That's the only way we should move forward. There is an external pressure, international pressure, but we must need to move on with that, and we need to create more comfort relationship with each other. And for this, the efforts are being done from both sides, and we must appreciate that. Now I will hand over to Ms. Amna Nisar Abbasi for concluding today's session.
Thank you so much, all the panelists, for joining us today, and especially the moderator, QAMAR CHEEMA, for giving us time. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you very much, sir. Allah Hafiz.